Welcome to MacVoicesTV. This is the Talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. I'm happy to welcome back an old friend with a new company, Mr. Ian Schray, this time of WellRed Apps, to talk about DropKey. Ian, it's great to have you back. It's been way too long. We seem to be ships passing along in the last year or so.
That's about right. We see each other in person, and it's like, oh, we'll talk soon. And then, it takes us like a month or 2 months. And no, it's great to be back. It's been a long time. It
has been. And now you've got a new gig. And I believe this one is quite a bit different than anything you've done before in a lot of ways.
That's true. So a little background. I've been in the Mac community since, 98 or so, and worked for a variety of different companies, including Version Tracker, which was one of my big fun ones. And I think we met soon after that. But now I'm on my own and doing my own thing with my own company, and we're making our own apps, and it's different. It's a lot of fun.
Well, that's great. So when you say you're doing your own company, does this mean you are everything from chief cook and bottle washer the whole way down to coder?
I don't do the coding.
Okay.
No, that's where my abilities stop. But I do have a partner. He's actually sitting just over on the other side of this computer, and he does the coding stuff, and I do the marketing and the words and the product design and all that. And then we have somebody that does some of the visual design elements for us as well. So she's not here right now, but she helps us out as well. So yeah, we're kind of a little group of the island of misfit toys. Kind of, we go off and we do our own stuff, and we've had a lot of fun. We've been doing it about a year now.
Oh, that's great. I mean, everybody wants to go out on their own, so that would be a stupid question to ask, but I will ask how you found it, because this gives you the perspective of having to deal with everything, not just the pieces you were used to when you were working with other folks.
Right. I think it was just time for me to give this a shot, and with some of the things that I've picked up over the years, I realized that it's not, I shouldn't say it's not hard. I'm saying that it's not anywhere near as difficult as you think it is when you're doing it. The idea of it is really scary, but then when you actually do it, you're like, well, I can do this. I mean, this is fine. As long as you get, take care of yourself, your business, take care of it the right way, and really run your business like a business, not just a playground or a play yard where you're just doing whatever. We actually run this like a business. We are profit focused. It's the way the whole thing should work, right?
That's what you have to do, and I think you're absolutely right. Too many people think of it as, oh boy, it's mine, and I can do with it what I want. And
right.
While that's true, there's still some very basic business aspects to things that you have to pay attention to, or it's going to go away.
You sure do. I just gave a talk at the Portland Mac User Group a couple weeks ago, and half of our 90-minute presentation was on just how to start a business and how to do this in a way that was sustainable and was not set up for failure. And that was a lot long. I was going to be like a 10-minute part of the discussion, and it ended up being like 45. So people are very interested in hearing how this all works.
I think so, and I think with the arrival of the iOS App Store and all the success stories that come out of that, especially at lower price points, with the Mac App Store and all the issues that has created for developers, but also the opportunities, there are more and more people, I firmly believe, that they're considering doing this either as a full-time gig or as, deciding, hey, there's this idea I've had for a long time, and I'm going to throw it out there and see who salutes it.
Yeah, and that's really what we've done really twice now in creating the company, and then also in creating the app. Because like I said, the company is not just the app. The app is something that we create as well, but our company is custom iOS and macOS software development, and then we also make our own app. So there's really two products there, a service and then a product. And we really had to test a lot of waters and lots of leaps of faith, and we're trying to make a go at it, and it's been quite rewarding for us so far.
Now, that's something I confess I did not understand, that WellRed Apps, that I can come to you with an app idea, you'll help me develop it?
Absolutely. We've done that already. And then also we have a company that I can't really talk about it specifically, but it doesn't really matter because it's not a household name. But we've made software for them to be installed on their company iPads. So that's why you look for us in the Mac App Store or the iOS App Store, and we're not there except for DropKey, because the software we make and the work we do is either for a client, and so we don't get the credit, or it's for something internal, and so it would never be in an app store. So it is interesting how we've had to do this whole thing. But this with DropKey, this is the beginning of several apps coming out under our name and our umbrella, as well as the custom stuff we do on the side. We're getting better at it, so we can take on more things at once. Basically, is the story.
Well, no, I wanted to get the DropKey, but I can't help but ask the question because I've heard this come up in discussions. If you are developing white label apps or something just for internal use, how are you getting them onto the iPad?
So Apple does provide something, they do provide provisioning, and by doing that, you can install anything you want onto an iPad you have physical control of, but then that's only 100 per developer account or 100 per instance. And so I can develop something that goes directly onto up to 100 iPads for a client without really a whole lot of trouble. We have to have physical control of the iPad, so I can't just put it available somewhere to download. We have to actually plug it in, and using Xcode, we can install it right there. There are services out there that let you have a literally unlimited number of iPads you can install on, but you can't do it onto an iPad you don't have some sort of administrator rights to. So it does need to be provisioned for that organization and then installed. So you're not doing anything that is going against what the iOS App Store limits are. This is something that is well documented that Apple allows you to do in a certain instance. And we're just playing with all those rules. The last thing we want to do is run afoul of Apple, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I think this is a very important thing, and I'm not sure. In fact, I didn't know exactly how it would work. So I think that anybody is thinking about adopting iPads for their own business and maybe doing some custom apps, first of all, here's a guy that can help you do it. But second, it also is something that doesn't have to be put out on the App Store for $5,000 to prevent people from downloading it. But there is a way to actually get it on and control it within, like you said, just a few limitations or parameters.
Right, and to be clear, there's a supported way to do it. So we're actually using Apple's own documentation to make this work correctly. But like for this client I mentioned, we have just a handful of iPads we're doing a test market on for them, and then eventually they're going to roll this out to several thousand iPads. Now at that point, we will have to go with some of these solutions. And we've taken a look at a lot of them. Mobile Iron is one, and AirWatch is another one, and you can Google those and get the URLs. But they're both great solutions for managing this entire process across really an unlimited number of iOS devices. And they actually usually support Macs, PCs, Androids, Blackberries for mixed environment. Now, we don't do the development for that, but it's nice because they do offer that support. And by doing that, you can actually install a little app store on these provisioned iPads or these iPads you've had control of. And then people can not buy because you don't do it with money, but you can download or acquire apps that are specifically built for those iPads. It's fascinating. If you go to air-watch.com, has some really nice videos on how this whole relationship works, and it's a side of iOS that most of us just never get a chance to see.
Yeah, I appreciate you talking about it because it is something, and I think those of us that more casually watch it wonder about we hear the iPad being talked about so much in enterprise and in corporate IT at all levels. And so now you've just given us a little peek inside exactly how some of it works, and maybe some folks will get some ideas for iPads and give you a call.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear from them.
Well, let's jump over and talk now about the product, your first product for WellRed Apps, DropKey. I'm anxious to hear a lot about this because this sounds like something that in a world where all of a sudden we have flashback and Mac users are they're going to have to start to pay more attention to security. It sounds like you've given us something that can help us along and not bother us too much with those little details.
So it is funny that now we are not anti-malware, so it is a different market, but it is funny that the flashback conversation happened just about the time we started talking about our software. And again, they're not even related to each other, but they're both security-minded concepts, and it was very fortunate that conversation happened at the same time. But basically, the idea is, you think about how many times you send a file to someone, either over email or instant messenger, or you put something in a Dropbox folder to save to somebody, or even, SneakerNet, the flash drive, or some sort of other server. And when you do that, every time you share a file that way, if you just take an Excel file, drag it onto Mail and start a new email with it, you're going to send that email and it's completely in the clear. So if somebody is able to get into your email account, whether it's Gmail, where all they need to know is your Gmail password because they already have your Gmail account email, right? So if they're going to do that, then they can go in and look at all your sent items and see every document you've ever sent to anyone. And they can do that from any computer all over the world. They don't even have to have physical control of your Mac. That freaked us out. We were dealing with this last year doing another piece of software, and I had to send a rather sensitive document over to my partner Logan, and it was completely in the clear, and I felt kind of weird sending it. And we talked about it, and out of this idea, the idea of DropKey was born. And that is that file encryption. And file encryption, a lot of people hear file encryption, they're just like, ugh, I don't want to do that. It's too complex, it's too ridiculous. And frankly, it is too complex, and many times it is ridiculous. And I don't pretend to be a security expert. I just like to take really complex technology and make it really easy to understand. And the idea of this public key cryptography, which is what we're using, is that I have a public key and a private key. And to be clear, a key is just a string of characters, numbers and letters, hundreds of characters long sometimes, that is randomly generated or algorithmically generated for you and for me. So I have my public key and my private key. You have your public key and your private key. We give each other our public keys. And once we've done that, we can now send files back and forth without a password. So that's the technology that's been around for almost 40 years that unfortunately most people just don't use because it's too complicated. It's too hard to share those things. It's too hard to deal with all that stuff. And there have been a lot of pieces of technology that have come out that have tried to make this easier. They just aren't easier. So we aim to finally make something that was going to make it so simple to send a file that was encrypted that sending it unencrypted seemed ridiculous. Like, why wouldn't you just go this extra one step to encrypt the file?
Okay, so let me ask a few questions that I think are common blockades to this. First of all, you say you send me your key, I send you my key. How do we send those keys and not violate the security protocol? Because obviously we're probably sending them over an unsecured method where they theoretically, if somebody really were paying attention, could intercept them.
Absolutely, and that's great. That's great that you asked that. So first of all, sending a key, like what do I do? Like where do I have to get in my terminal and type in a bunch of stuff and do something weird? No, when DropKey launches for the first time on a computer, on a Mac, it will place a public key in your address book me card, the card that you've designated that's yours. And that by its very definition, the public key is in no way secretive. I could put it on a billboard. There's nothing secretive about it. I actually, if you look at the DropKey icon really, really closely, inside the little lock hole is my public key. And you can only see a little part of it, but it's there. And then my private key is generated, and it's in my keychain access in your utilities folder. And so that stuff is all generated automatically for you. Then you send me, the way you send me your key is to send me your address book vCard, which has it attached. So basically when you send your vCard, which you can actually do in address book now without DropKey installed, you can export your vCard. If you look in there now, you'll see a card that is marked as you. And it's usually a little silhouette of a person in the listing of all your cards. And that's where you normally store your phone number and your email address and your IM handles. And the system, macOS 10, uses that card to determine certain things. Determine your email address. It automatically puts things in there, takes things out. And you would send that to someone. If you've ever used Bump on iOS, for example, same concept. Those are also your vCards. Well, we found that in there you can store Facebook and Twitter and Flickr and whatever else. We can also create the custom fields. So we created a DropKey field. And in that DropKey field is your public key. And so whenever I share my card with you, you're now getting my public key, which, again, by design, by definition, public key, you want that out there to as many people as possible. It is not a security risk to have that anywhere. Like I said, I'd put it up on a billboard, and it's in the DropKey icon. My public key is partially viewable inside the keyhole. So kind of funny. We did the almost an Easter egg with that. So now that I've done that, I then go up to the key manager, and I would just verify those 4 words that are generated out of randomly generated from a dictionary. And I would ask you, Chuck, what are your 4 words? And you would tell me your 4 words. We pulled all the bad words out. So it'd be something like, I don't know, mouse, baseball, lake, muffin, or whatever. And I'd say, yep, that's you. And I click a little button that says verify. And now we're clear. Now we're good. We can send files back and forth that have been encrypted. But the point is that you don't want to do that a lot, because now we're getting into the realm of a little too complicated. You do this once, one time per recipient. And then every time you want to send something, it is literally one extra click of your mouse to send an encrypted file than it would be to send an unencrypted file. We've made it as simple as possible.
Okay, so this makes a certain amount of sense to me, and I think you're going to next go to the private key, which is something that's quite a bit more secure. Mm-hmm. But if I have a public key and I'm going to put it up on a billboard and spread it around and be promiscuous with it, what's kind of the point for a public key?
So that's exactly right. That's the public key. That's totally fine for people to have. If you think about it in terms of in a little different way, let's ignore the problems of spam with your email address. And I'm not discounting that problem, but ignore that for a second. Don't you want as many people as possible to have your email address? I mean, you would want certainly any potential business clients to have your email address. You would want all your friends and family to have your email address, right?
Yeah, within reason.
Again, ignoring the spam and within reason, of course. Having your public key out there only makes it so that other people can encrypt files that you can open. It has nothing to do with your files and that you've encrypted for people. Is only for people that if I have your public key, I can encrypt files for you to open. The opposite is not true unless you have my public key as well. So it's not even, I use the email example only because among your friends and family and coworkers, you want all of them to have your email address. And the same thing is somewhat true of public key, and it is not any sort of a security problem for people to have your public key. The opposite is very true for your private key. You don't want anyone to have that. And it is tucked away inside your keychain access on your Mac. It requires an administrative password to even look at it, much less export it and use it. And to be very clear, you're never touching these keys. You don't have to do anything with them. DropKey does all of that for you. DropKey handles all of this relationship management for you, and it handles all the encryption. You literally have to just type in the person's name that you want to encrypt the file for. That's it. That's it.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this right, I can think of the public key as the advantage to that is people can send me things that they're comfortable sending me. Mm-hmm. But the private key is more for me to be able to send things to people that I want to make sure are secure and only those people can open.
That's kind of true, but it's not, I shouldn't say it's simpler than that. It's less complex than that. And that is that your public keys are the things people are supposed to be sharing, but your private key is yours. Again, I like analogies. So the other analogy would be if you're at Macworld Expo, which is where we saw each other last, and you took your house key off of your keychain, physically your house key, don't forget about computers, and you left it on the street in San Francisco, and there's no identifying marks on there, and then you go home, and you're in Pennsylvania, you go home to Pennsylvania, does it really matter that your key is in the middle of the street in San Francisco? Like, there are millions of homes, so it doesn't really matter that got out there, because the chance of someone tracing that back to you are astronomical, right? With public keys, it's the same kind of obscurity that's evident in these keys. Yes, this key is mine because I've told you it's mine, but with it in and of itself, that key is worthless. It's really, there's nothing that people can do with it unless they've associated it with you. There is no way anyone can open your encrypted files encrypted for you, not by you. There's no way someone can open those files by just having your public key. There's no security risk there at all. By very definition, I mean, the idea of a public key is that I can share this with people and be able to benefit from the security related to that without any risk of compromising my computer or my issues or my stuff. Passwords, by comparison, are extremely insecure. Even the most secure passwords are typically written down on a Post-it note and stuck on your on the front of someone's laptop, right? So, and passwords can be guessed. Usually, I mean, I'm not talking about super secure passwords, but how many people do you know that have a password that's like their wife's middle name and their birthday or something? I mean, these things can be guessed, right?
Yeah.
And how many times have you gone? This is funny. My bank is really, really secure. They're very restrictive on the kinds of passwords you can use. You have to have so many characters, and you have to have at least one symbol, and it has to have at least one uppercase letter. It needs to be a number in there. I mean, all these different restrictions. But then if I forget my password and I click the forget my password button, it asks me who my high school mascot was. Now, there are thousands of people who know my high school mascot, right?
Yeah.
So they can get my password back. Like, that's ridiculous. And I don't want to bag it because some people do take password security very seriously. But I think the key is that with DropKey, we're taking the whole password concept out of it and instead saying passwords are great, passwords have their place, but if you want to send true encrypted files back and forth with someone, let's not do this with a password. Let's do it with this one-time setup, and then we can send things all we want, and there's no real issue with opening them.
Okay, so I think I've got, and your analogy about the key in the street in San Francisco is perfect. But then what is my private secure key good for? Because if you and I want to exchange files, don't I have to send you that private key so you know what it is and can open it?
No, because algorithmically, your public key and your private key are somewhat tied together, just like a key and a lock are, right? Okay. So they're somehow tied together. You also wouldn't like, back to the key in the middle of the street. You don't want to leave the lock there, although that doesn't matter because it's not in your house anymore. But then you got the whole matched pair, right? You also don't want to leave your address there. That'd be another piece of information that makes you astronomically less secure. But the key by in and of itself is not all that big of a deal. The private key in this analogy would be, I guess, your address. I mean, your home address. It gives them the tool to go out and do that. You never give your public key to anybody. In fact, and we didn't make it this way, macOS 10 makes it this way. It is very, very difficult to give someone your private key because that's not something that should be shared. If you were to open keychain access right now, I'm betting you that if you go under the keys section, you already have a number of private keys for other systems, for other software. If you're a developer, you have a developer account for macOS 10 or iOS, and you have Xcode installed, you have private keys already. And you never have to touch them. You never have to do anything with them. You probably didn't even know you had them. It's the same concept. You never give them to anyone. They stay there. They stay in your keychain access. My advice is don't even go look at them. There's no reason to. They're accessed when it's appropriate to be accessed, and that's all there is to it. You don't have to touch them.
Okay, so I think I've got the key thing down and the ease of transfer and exactly now what they do and how they're used.
Right, and the really thing to keep in mind, more than anything else is that we've just explained something that's really, really complex. The average user doesn't even have to worry about this. And this is not technology we invented. You can go on Wikipedia and search for public key cryptography, and this technology has been around for almost 40 years. So it is rock solid. It is a standard. I'm not trying to sell people on the concept of public key cryptography because it's already out there and a generally accepted standard. So what we're doing is making something that's very easy to take advantage of that.
Okay, so you've indicated it's pretty easy to use here. Now, the other thing, though, that has, I think, hindered the adoption of this kind of security is the ease of use on an everyday basis. Mm-hmm. Because even though Apple Mail has become a standard, so has Gmail. So have a few other things. Everybody has their own favorite email client. And much to my surprise, there's still things coming on board that are great improvements, like Sparrow. So how easily does this integrate with my email of choice? Because that's
Sure.
really what we're talking about here is emailing things back and forth.
So I think to begin that, I needed to describe very briefly how this works and how the software, the usability of it, not the under the hood stuff. So you have a file sitting on your desktop. It can literally be any kind of file. We like to joke that you can even use DropKey on itself. DropKey will encrypt itself if you want to. Any PDF, any Excel file. People ask me, well, does it work on, this kind of file? Yes. Does it work? Yes. It works on anything, any sort of file. Normally we would drag that on top of our email client in the dock, and it would open up a new email with that file attached. If you've never seen this in action, that's a great macOS 10 tip right there. Just drag it on top of the mail icon, and a new email comes up. The file's attached. Similarly, instead of dragging it to that icon, you now drag it into the menu bar icon for DropKey. And there's just a little black icon up there. You drag and drop it onto that menu bar item, and you tell it who you would like to send that email to. And just like you would send, I'm sorry, I should say, who you'd like to send the file to. Just like you would type in a person's name into your mail client, but you're doing it in DropKey. DropKey then, in the background, very, very quickly, creates a copy of that file, encrypts it for that person or persons, opens a new email message in Mail, and attaches the file to it without you doing anything else. You just drag the file up, type the recipient, hit the button, and a new email is ready to send. You just type in your subject and whatever else you'd like to put into the email. We counted, and it's one extra click of the mouse to send a file through DropKey than it is to send a file through Mail. So it is just one extra click, not just one extra step, one extra click of the mouse. We couldn't shave off that one click. We tried, let me tell you. I was talking to our friends Adam and Tanya Angst at Macworld and showing them that, and Tanya gave me some sort of comment like, "Oh, you couldn't get that one click out of there, could you?" I said, "No, I couldn't. I couldn't do it, just the one." So if you use an email client that's not Mail, typically the email clients on the Mac, Outlook being the big exception and the big elephant in the room there, but typically those email clients still use Address Book. And so the relationship between your email client and Address Book is still there, and so you're still using the same concept. The difference is that currently with 1.0, DropKey will not create a new formatted email message for you. However, DropKey does offer something that right now it's the default method of encrypting is encrypt and send, and that's what it says in the button. That's a one button, encrypt the file and put it in an email for me. By either holding down the Option key or changing the preference under the Preferences menu, you can change the behavior to just encrypt it. So in this case, it makes a copy of the file and encrypts it and puts it wherever you tell it to save, back to your desktop. Then you can open up your Gmail, webmail, you can open up Outlook, you open up anything and just send that file as you would any other attachment. Think about zipping. You know how you take a bunch of files or one file and you zip it and then you have the zipped file right there? Same concept. Then you can attach that instead. So if you're a Mail user, DropKey makes it drop dead easy. If you're not a Mail user, it'll still work. It's just there's an extra step here and there.
Okay, so it sounds like you've made this as easy as possible. You've still allowed me to have my email program of choice if it's not Mail. You did mention the elephant in the room being Outlook. Ian, I guess the other thing is performance and speed and decryption on the other end, let's say. And what I mean by that is sometimes, and we all do it, we're on the phone and here, let me send you that file right quick so you can look at it. Other than the overhead we've talked about here, which is either minimal or just slightly less than minimal, is there any overhead on the other side of receiving an encrypted mail like that and getting it unkeyed or dekeyed, or I'm not sure what the proper phrase is.
Unencrypted.
Unencrypted, thank you.
Yeah. No, it's very simple. In fact, you get the file as an attachment and you just double click on it. And DropKey springs to life. It determines that you are the intended recipient and then asks you where you'd like to save that unencrypted file. And the .dropkey file format that we've created for this actually uses zip technology. So everything you can do with zip, you can do with the DropKey file format. You can create multiple files into one archive. it does actually zip it, so you do get the little savings of size. So that is part of the process as well. But no, there's nothing to it. You just double click the file and it saves it out to, say, your desktop or your downloads folder, and then you would open the file. So again, normally you would just double click an Excel file in your mail and it opens in Excel, right? There is one extra step of decrypting and then you can open it. But it's the same as if you got a zip file.
Ian, I'm running out of questions. I'm running out of reasons not to use DropKey because you're making it too easy. You're making me feel like you said at the outset, I'd be kind of foolish if there's anything that I have here that's anywhere minimally important that I wouldn't want to encrypt it just to make sure that somebody doesn't get it, that maybe I'd rather not have it.
And that was the idea of DropKey, and really any technology or any software we aim to make, is that we want to take things that are relatively complex and make them so easy that you never even really think about it. You don't have to take my word for it that public key cryptography is the way to go. You just need to go do a little bit of reading in Wikipedia. Again, I invite you to go check out the Wikipedia page on public key cryptography to see this technology in action and see how it was invented and who uses it. And everybody believes in this technology. It's tried and true. And like I said, it's about 40 years old, which, as we know in computer, that's ancient, right? I mean, that's prehistoric. So we're not asking you to take have any sort of faith in our ability to encrypt your file. We're using technology that's out there, and we're also not holding on to your documents ever. It never goes through WellRed Apps servers. It never goes through anything that we have access to or even interest in looking at. We just help you to encrypt it. DropKey encrypts it, and then you send it as you normally would. That's really all there is to it.
Okay, so you've taken away all my reasons. You've explained that you're not a security risk because you're not holding anything. Ian, where do I go to get it? How much is it going to cost me? And I get the impression that from your discussion of installation, it's just as easy as the whole process you've described for using it. Yeah,
and it is easy. I'll take that last point first. It is just an app. So on the Mac, and you just launch it, and it puts everything where you want. Then you just want it to be running in the background. Launch it at startup, or launch it at login, I guess isn't what we do now. Launch at startup. That's an old Mac OS 9 term right there. So yeah, it really is. There's not even an installer. You just run it, and it on first launch, it does everything it needs to do. So DropKey, you can get it from our website, which is we set up a little URL of getdropkey.com. And that has more information about DropKey and of course the way to get a 30-day trial. And by the way, that 30-day trial, when it has expired, it still will work as a decryption utility. So you can always decrypt files people have sent you. We don't want to hold any documents or any data hostage because you don't want to pay us. So you can always decrypt using even the expired trial. The encryption side is the part that you're buying, and it is normally $29.99, and we're offering it now for $19.99. And with that, we will give you a license for a free second copy. So if you can give it to your friend. You remember walkie-talkies when they came out? You had a walkie-talkie, but you couldn't do anything with it because no one else had a walkie-talkie. Well, we're giving you 2 walkie-talkies. So for $19.99, you do get 2 copies of DropKey. And we're also available in the Mac App Store, but obviously we can't do the free second copy there automatically. So if you'll just email us a copy of your receipt from the Mac App Store with the purchase, we'll email you back a code to get a free second copy. But that's where you can get it.
And you bring up an important point to be very clear that if I'm going to do this with someone, they have to have a copy of DropKey as well. Mm-hmm. So
they do.
The walkie-talkie analogy is perfect. But Ian, the other thing that occurs to me is if I am a DropKey user and you are a DropKey user and you send me something and I get that something on my iDevice, can I decrypt it, or does it just have to lay there?
It has to stay there until you can get back to your Mac, which I know is a pain. And I'll tell you, we built DropKey for Mac OS X with the anticipation of going to iOS. So we built it with the future in mind, and we will have at the very least a decryption tool coming out for iOS in the future. I don't know when. I'm not even being cagey. I don't even have an idea. But that is something that's definitely on our roadmap to be able to open. So again, we built this technology with that in mind. So yeah, you will be able to.
Perfect.
But
Okay.
for now, it's just Mac to Mac. Yep.
Okay, so the Mac App Store, obviously, but to easily get the free second copy and all, what's the website that they need to visit?
GetDropKey.com. We set it up very, very simple to get to. So you can go to WellRedApps.com and click around there, but GetDropKey.com will take you exactly where you need to be.
Perfect. Perfect. Ian, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for the time, and thank you for introducing us to DropKey. I feel more secure already.
That's right. Even talking about it makes you more secure.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Thanks.
Exactly.
Thank you, Chuck. I really appreciate the time.
Folks, that's Ian Schray of WellRed Apps talking about DropKey. As always, I'll have links in the show notes to everything you need to know and where you need to go to get DropKey and feel more secure yourself. We've also added live fire commenting to the Mac Voices and MacVoicesTV websites. We'd love to hear what you know and what you think about DropKey and about everything else we do, so please stop by and let us know. Until the next time, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Mac Voices TV is part of the Mac Voices Group and a member of MacLevel 10.